Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really fascinating and honestly pretty contradictory. It's our relationship with nature.
Yeah, it's this thing where, we have this deep pull towards it. We build it up in our minds.
Romanticize it, definitely.
Exactly. But then you hear stories like Christopher McCandless or Timothy Treadwell, and, well, the reality hits hard. It can be brutal.
It really can. And those stories, as powerful as they are, aren't just like isolated tragedies, are they?
No, not at all. They really tap into this bigger picture, this societal way we've come to see the natural world.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, right?
So-
To unpack that. Look at how this relationship has changed over time through history, philosophy.
And even these kind of weird modern paradoxes.
Yeah.
We want to figure out why we've gotten so romantic about nature, and importantly, what that actually means when we try to tackle, real environmental problems.
Right. And we've pulled together a whole bunch of sources, articles, history, research to sort of boil it down for you. Think of this as your shortcut to getting really clued in without having to wade through everything yourself.
And to really get a handle on this clash between romance and reality, those stories, McCandless and Treadwell, are unavoidable starting points.
Okay, let's start with McCandless. September 6, 1992. Some hunters in Alaska find something pretty grim.
Yeah, the body of Christopher McCandless, just 24 years old in this old bus way out in the wilderness. And his backstory just, wow, it resonated.
He just graduated college, right? Gave away his savings, cut ties.
Threw off this comfortable life, basically, all to be a traveler, live in the wild. He genuinely believed nature would help him find his true self, get away from consumerism.
But that romantic idea, it ended badly.
Tragically, yeah. Slow starvation. Apparently complicated because he ate some poisonous seeds he thought were edible. And his story just exploded the book into the wild, the movie.
Became almost legendary.
It did. Yeah, but with this really dangerous side effect, it inspired thousands, mostly young men, to try and copy his trip, go to the bus, cross the Teclonica River, which is incredibly dangerous.
I read that statistic from the forest rangers, something like 75% of rescues out there were for these people trying to follow in his footsteps, not local hunters.
That's right, 75%.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just rescues. People died, like Jonathan Kroom in Oregon in 2013 trying to do a similar thing.
It got so bad they actually moved the bus, didn't they, in 2019, because another couple drowned trying to reach it.
Yeah, they had to. It just shows the pull of that romantic narrative, even when it's deadly.
But it really makes you ask, was he an inspiration or, a warning?
Well, that's the debate. Some people, like the writer Craig Medred, were pretty blunt. Said he was basically a naive rich kid treating nature like a fantasy and died because he just didn't respect its real rules.
Harsh, but maybe realistic.
And then others, like the science writer Steve Silberman, took a different angle, saying, look, his story is tragic, but the lesson isn't reckless romance. It should be about deep care, deep respect for nature. Caution.
Which brings us to Timothy Treadwell, another really intense story, an environmentalist, filmmaker.
Spent 13 years, 13 summers, living right alongside grizzly bears in Alaska, filming them, studying them. From his point of view, it seemed like he had this incredible, almost magical bond.
Looked idyllic in his footage, some of it.
But the ending was just horrific. He and his girlfriend were killed, eaten by a bear in 2003, right there in the park.
And Werner Herzog, the director who made that documentary about him.
Yeah, using Treadwell's own footage. Herzog had this chilling observation. He said Timothy saw love, intelligence, whatever, in the bear's eyes. Herzog just saw indifference.
Complete indifference.
His point was crucial. Nature isn't romantic. It's not savage either. It's just uninterested. That bear ate Timothy, Herzog argued, because it was October. It needed fat for hibernation, and Timothy was, quote, a moving piece of meat. Nothing personal.
Wow. Uninterested. That really cuts through the romance, doesn't it? So
Whoa.
why do people like Timothy, like Christopher, develop this intense romantic connection that seems to just ignore that indifference?
It's a huge question. Timothy really seemed to believe life with bears was better than with humans. And Christopher wrote in his diary about finding his real self out there, unlike in the city.
It's like they're projecting something onto nature.
Maybe. Filling a void, perhaps? Because the day-to-day reality of nature, it's not a movie. It's prey, predator, toxic plants, animals hibernating, mating. It's a kind of a boring routine, as one source called it.
Not exactly the stuff of adventure films all the time.
Not at all. And when that routine, those basic laws of survival, get ignored because of a romantic ideal.
Uh,
Well, McCandless and Treadwell are what can happen. They're the consequence.
It's strange to think that this romantic view is relatively new, though. If you go way back, our relationship with nature wasn't warm and fuzzy at all.
Oh, definitely not. Early humans and nature. It was often hostile combat, basically.
There's that overkill hypothesis, right, from Paul S. Martin back in '66.
Yeah, suggesting humans actually drove loads of large mammal species, like 178 of them, to extinction way back between 52,000 and 9,000 BC. So much for peaceful coexistence.
So nature was seen as the enemy, something to fight.
Or survive, despite. You had to be careful. You killed things before they killed you. And if you couldn't fight something, maybe you worshipped it, hoping for mercy, like Aja, that African forest goddess. Appeasement, almost.
Okay, so hostility, fear, maybe some worship. How did we get from that to, well, yearning for it? What changed?
The big game changer seems to be agriculture. Professor Mark Maslin points this out. As big animals disappeared and hunting got trickier, humans turned to farming.
And farming is different. It's not combat.
Exactly. It's more like a deal, an agreement with nature. You plant seeds, you tend the soil, follow the rules, and nature gives back. It creates this friendly, reciprocal thing, give and take, care for reward.
That makes sense. And it worked, obviously.
Massively. Look at the planet now. 96% of mammal biomass is humans, or our livestock. That's the result of that partnership. Humans figured out nature wasn't just hostile. It had rules, laws you could understand and work with.
Okay, so partnership through farming, but then the Industrial Revolution. That feels like another huge turning point.
Absolutely massive. We're in the 18th century, the Enlightenment, science is booming, Newton's explaining universal laws. But industry also means factories, cities.
People leaving the farms,
Yeah.
moving away from direct contact with nature.
Right. And suddenly you're living surrounded by machines, noise, smoke, concrete. And what happens? People start to miss nature. They start yearning for it, remembering the beauty, maybe conveniently forgetting how tough it could be.
Nostalgia kicks in.
Big time. And that yearning fuels the whole romantic movement in art, literature. It's a pushback against what they saw as this, like, depressing and gray industrial world.
And philosophers started thinking about this too, like Rousseau.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau, yeah. He tackled this question back in 1749, basically. Has all this science and industry actually made us better people, morally?
And his answer was,
Nope. He argued humans were actually at their best closer to nature, in what he called a simpler state of nature. City life, he thought. Bread competition, etiquette, always comparing yourself, salary, clothes, status, leads to envy, unhappiness.
and he used that idea of the noble savage.
He did, pointing to those early European accounts of Native Americans, portraying them as simpler, happier, more cooperative because they were close to nature. Then, fast forward a few centuries, after colonization and urbanization.
And they had all these existential problems, as he put it. Alcohol, violence over trinkets.
Right, implying that civilization, moving away from that natural state, had corrupted them. It positioned nature itself as inherently good, a moral guide.
Wow. So nature becomes not just something beautiful, but morally superior.
That idea really gained traction. The anthropologist Mary Douglas noted how some people started seeing nature as this incredibly complex system of rules, almost better than human laws.
Like a measuring stick.
Kind of, yeah. A moral meter based on what's natural versus unnatural. Forget government or religion, just ask, is it natural?
But that sounds tricky. What's considered natural changes all the time.
Exactly. Think about things like racism or interracial marriage. Both were defended as natural or attacked as unnatural at different times. It's why this approach gets called mercenary ethics. Like a hired gun, you can basically twist natural to justify almost anything. It's unstable.
Okay, so we've gone from fear to partnership on the farm to this yearning, this romantic ideal, even a moral code born out of industrial life. But something else crept in around the same time, didn't it? Guilt.
Oh yeah, big time. That same 18th century when Romanticism bloomed, that's also when scientists like Georges Louis started pointing out, hey, all this industry digging up minerals, cutting down forests, killing animals, we're destroying stuff that won't come back.
The dawn of environmental awareness, really.
And that seed of guilt just grew. Later ideas like James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, the Earth as a single living organism, really amplified it. Now, we weren't just using resources, we were potentially harming this massive living thing.
Which makes the feeling of responsibility or guilt much more intense.
Totally. And you see this guilt reflected everywhere now. In our collective imagination, our stories. Think Thanos and Endgame, wiping out half of life so nature can recover.
Or even during the COVID lockdowns, remember? All those posts celebrating dolphins returning to canals, air clearing up.
Followed by those memes. The planet is healing. We're the virus.
It's a powerful narrative. That study you mentioned from Simon Fraser University on environmental romanticism?
Yeah, it confirmed this perception, this idea that the Earth's ideal state is basically human-free, that nature is suffering and it must live even at our expense. It turns nature into something sacred almost, sanctified by our guilt.
But hang on, isn't there something odd about that? Why is it wrong for humans, as organisms, to try and survive, consume resources, when, like, viruses or locusts or lions are just doing their natural thing?
That's the uncomfortable question, isn't it? Nobody's denying humans have done serious damage to the planet. That's undeniable.
Hmm.
But does that mean we should flagellate ourselves into oblivion or wish for our own extinction? We are also part of nature, trying to survive like everything else.
It feels like there needs to be a balance, not this extreme self-blame.
Right. Which leads to another really important layer here. Who actually gets to afford this romantic view of nature?
Ah, the privilege aspect.
Exactly. Those dreamy romantic observations, as one source put it, often come from people in comfortable positions. Royalty, upper middle class writers, activists. Even McCandless, tragic as his story is, came from a well-off family. He had the option to walk away from it all.
Alan Levinovitz made that point too, right? The safer and more developed a country is.
The more its people tend to romanticize nature. You see it in the developed world with things like rejecting vaccines for natural remedies or choosing natural childbirth, safe in the knowledge that if something goes wrong, a high-tech hospital is right there.
It's the luxury of having a safety net that lets you idealize the natural.
Precisely. I remember reading about a writer who visited a tribe in Peru expecting this, pure back-to-nature existence,
I'm found.
mobile phones and electricity. And the people weren't lamenting lost connections with trees. They were thrilled. They could see at night, feel safer. They just wanted basic security, not some abstract spiritual connection.
So for people living closer to the harsh realities, nature isn't a playground or a spa.
No. And that's where the term commodification of nature comes in. For some, particularly in wealthier societies, nature becomes a product, an adventure park, a wellness retreat, a source of discoveries. And sometimes, indigenous people get viewed as part of the scenery, these exotic exhibits, rather than folks who might just want reliable electricity or better tools.
And this ties back to the guilt thing, doesn't it? But maybe the guilt is aimed wrong.
I think that's a key insight. Look at practicalities. That eco-friendly universal diet from the Eat Lancet Commission. Over 1 billion people literally cannot afford it. Plant-based milks often cost more than dairy.
So we're made to feel guilty as individuals.
But the solutions being pushed are out of reach for so many, and more importantly, who's actually causing the bulk of the problem?
Not the average person in a developing country, that's for sure. They suffer the most from climate change.
Exactly. That carbon majors report is staggering. Just 100 companies, fossil fuel giants like ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, responsible for 71% of industrial greenhouse gas emissions since the late 80s. 71%.
100 companies.
Yeah. And studies, like one from the US EPA back in 2001, found that the most effective environmental gains came from things like taxing big polluters or large-scale initiatives like Godrej building mangrove farms in India that soak up thousands of tons of carbon. Systemic stuff.
It really puts the whole individual responsibility focus into perspective. It's like that analogy.
Paper straw in a plastic cup.
Exactly. It feels like these big economic players almost benefit from us focusing on our individual sins, feeling guilty about our choices because it distracts from their massive systemic impact. They profit from romanticizing nature and pushing guilt onto us.
So wrapping this all up, what have we learned from this deep dive? Nature isn't our lover, it's not our enemy, it's not even really a moral teacher.
It's more like a space, a system, with resources we depend on.
Right, a dynamic system we are part of and utterly reliant on. Our survival is tied to its health. And its destruction isn't fundamentally because individual humans are inherently bad or parasitic.
It's more about the economic system. The actions of huge corporations, powerful governments, often the ones most disconnected from the direct consequences.
That seems to be where the evidence points. So the real solution isn't about wishing humans away or getting lost in extreme romanticism or just throwing our hands up and being careless.
It's about shifting the focus, redistributing responsibility towards those big players, changing how we produce things, manage resources on a massive scale.
That seems much more effective. And of course, this doesn't diminish the role of activists at all. They're crucial for raising awareness, for putting pressure on those companies and governments to actually make those systemic changes.
It's a complex picture. We need awareness, but also targeted action.
Ultimately, the goal should probably be something like striving to make life better for ourselves, for others around us, and that others has to include the animals, the plants, the planet itself.
So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this. Considering everything we've talked about, the history, the romance, the guilt, the privilege, how might your own views and actions regarding nature be shaped by these bigger narratives, even if you mean well?
And maybe more importantly, what steps could you take or support that aim for real systemic change, moving beyond just individual efforts, important as those are?
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.